Hi there, I am Michael McMurtrey and welcome to the Ingles table. Today we are going to prepare a delicious recipe perfect for the holidays. This is my harvest pumpkin soup. And instead of pumpkin, we're going to be using a Japanese pumpkin. So it's not a traditional thing, it's called a kabocha squash. So we're going to roast that and carrots and a sweet potato. And I'm using carrots and sweet potato instead of using sugar. Okay, so that's where our process is. So we're going to put our carrots, I've just cut them into like 2-inch lengths. We have a sweet potato, just a typical sweet potato, cutting the ends off and then cutting it once lengthwise. And then we have our kabocha squash. So this can be really intimidating, even though it looks like it's a really hard shell. It's actually a really thin shell, but it is a hard pumpkin squash. So you want to be a little bit careful. This is how I like to cut it. I like to just sort of cut that top stem off. Just take your time cutting through it, and you want to do the same to the bottom. So just cut that little bottom part off. It doesn't have to be completely off, it just gets you started and makes it easier to cut, all right? And then just take the point of your knife and you want to come down and just wiggle your knife back and forth, and then you'll feel it like go through, okay? And then you want to go to the other side, do the same thing. Again, just wiggle through. See how it sort of breaks apart? And even once it gets to this point, you can just sort of break it apart. And then we want to take a spoon. I have a spoon here, and we're going to want to scoop out all the seeds. We're going to coat everything in oil, a little salt and pepper. I'm going to throw it into the oven at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes until everything gets soft, and then we'll go on to our next step. So I'll be right back. Okay, just took the squash and sweet potato and carrots out. We're going to let them cool, and I'm going to go on to the next step. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut an entire onion. It's a pretty large onion. I like onions a lot, and so I usually, even when it says medium onion, I just go for a large. I like the flavor. And we just need big chunks, like so. And then we're gonna throw all of that into, I've got some butter and olive oil in here. I always like to add a little bit of olive oil to any butter that I'm using. It prevents it from burning. Even if you just throw a little bit in there. So here's the rest of that onion. And we're gonna start cooking that up. And I've got some other ingredients. I have 3 or 4 cloves of garlic right here. You can just do a rough chop on that. It's all gonna get blended together, so this is just fine. Throw that in there. And then we're gonna add a little bit of ginger. Now, if you're not familiar with the easiest way to cut ginger, we're not gonna use this whole thing, probably about half of it. But if you take a spoon and just use your spoon, you can peel the ginger really easily, just like that. It's a very easy way to get the ginger peel off. And it's nice that Ingles has fresh ginger because it adds such a much better flavor than ground ginger when you're cooking something, especially during the holidays. You want that gingery taste. All right, so once you have this, you can cut that into little pieces, or you can use a ginger, there's a device that mashes it up. I just use my microplane and it works perfect. So just get your microplane here and just right over the garlic and onion that's simmering. We're just gonna add our ginger. I like a good deal of ginger. This is probably like what they would call 1 inch of ginger. And you can use more or less. Again, this recipe is really conducive to making it your own. You can switch up flavors if you don't like a certain one. You can add some heat to it if you want to add some spiciness to it. So that's really nice. So we have all that in there. I'm gonna give that a stir. And then we're gonna add our spices. We're using cardamom, and we're using cumin, and coriander, and salt and pepper, and there's one other thing, turmeric. And turmeric adds a really great color. So I've got those all measured out here. Going to add that in there, stir it around again. And let that go until the onions become sort of translucent and you can start smelling everything. It's always good to heat up your spices a bit so they don't taste powdery. They actually start integrating with the onion and the oil. All right, so now that can keep going, and I'm gonna start preparing the next step, which is our roasted vegetables. So I've got them over here. They've been cooling. Of course, you can just throw your carrots in. They don't need to be, nothing's fancy. And the skin's gonna come right off of these sweet potatoes. They're still a little bit warm to the touch, but it's fine. Just drop that in. And then for the squash, what I like to do is you can actually throw this skin in with everything like this, just like this, but I don't want the green to affect the color of the soup, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it off. So I just use my knife and give it a little help. It comes right off. Look at that color. It's really, so this kind of squash, it's called Japanese pumpkin. It's very popular in Asian cuisine. You may have seen it. They use this for tempura. They put it in stir fries. It's got kind of a combination of flavor between a pumpkin and a sweet potato. So it's a little sweeter. Whoops. It's a little sweeter than a pumpkin and a little less sweet than a sweet potato. And it's just got a really great nutty flavor. Some people say it has kind of a flavor like a chestnut. So if you like chestnuts, you're gonna love this. Again, if you get a little bit of green in there, it's not gonna be a big deal, but try to get as much off as you can so you get a nice orange soup. And you know what, if you can't find this kind of squash, you can use regular pumpkin, you can use butternut squash, acorn squash, any kind of hard winter squash is gonna be great. I just particularly love this one. And I was in the Ingles yesterday picking this up, and the produce guy came by and he was so excited that I had picked one of these up to use. He's like, "Thank you for buying that." I guess he was proud to bring it in the store. All right, so we've got now our squash in there, and we're just gonna give that a little mix. Break it apart. Mix it up with the onions and the spices, and then we're gonna add some broth. I like using this Harvest Farms chickenless broth for anyone that's coming to the holidays that doesn't eat meat. This always gives them something that they can have. And you really, because it's like such a minimal ingredient, it's no one's gonna know you used it. I love these boxes, they're great. So easy to just store and keep in your, whenever they go on sale, I always buy a bunch, keep them in my pantry. All right, so we got 2 boxes full of that. Throw some salt and pepper in there. I like a good amount of pepper. This is when you might want to add some other spices. If you like curry, you could add curry and make a curry pumpkin soup. You could add some red pepper flakes in here. You could add some sriracha, whatever. All right, put some salt in. And we're just gonna stir this a bit, let it all come together. And when I come back, I'm gonna show you how I prepare the final part of this soup. Okay, so we've been cooking this for, I don't know, about 10 minutes. And now the final step, I'm gonna put some soaked raw cashews in. So I'm using this instead of a cream sauce or a coconut milk or anything. If you've ever done this before, you just get some raw cashews, you can soak them overnight, drain the water. And when you puree these, it becomes like a cream sauce. It's got lots of protein and it has a very neutral flavor. But it's a great sauce, great addition to make something creamy. So I'm going to add that into there. Stir that up. All right, so now it's time to process the soup. So all you need to do is get your ladle, and you want to just, in small batches, you want to add it to your blender. Now remember, if you don't know, when you blend hot ingredients in a blender, it expands, and so you should never go above the halfway point. If you do, it will potentially come out the top and burn you really bad. So just be careful about that. Don't rush it. Just take it in batches. Try not to make as much of a mess as I'm making right now. All right, so we can just start with that, and I'll show you. If you have a high-powered blender like I do, that's a great thing. You can also use an immersion stick blender right in there. It won't get quite as smooth, but it's also a viable option. But you can see how smooth it gets. Oh, I forgot one little step, so I'm going to do it right now. It's all going to mix together. But you just add a splash of apple cider vinegar at the end. It just sort of wakens everything up. So that's it. That's all it takes, and it will brighten up your whole thing. So I'm going to empty all of this into a pot. I'm going to finish that all up. But first, I have a finished bowl. It's right here. This is how it comes out. And I like to top it with a mixture of herbs and pepitas and dried cranberries. You can use whatever you like. You could even put a little bit of cream on top if you like. I just take a handful and I sprinkle it on there. It adds a lot of color and texture to your dish, and it's done. And it's absolutely delicious. I hope you try it. And remember, there are so many great recipes to be found here on the website. Check them all out. I'll see you next time.